All right, well, we'll say welcome back for folks from the break here. So basically, we shifted the Hurricane WatchNet presentation to after the break, and then we'll just go through the rest of the presentations from there. And one of our presentations is a fairly short video, so I think we'll also make up some time here this afternoon. So with that, I'll start off with a quick introduction of our next presenter, KB5HAV, Bobby Graves, Net Manager for the Hurricane WatchNet. We've had the pleasure to know Bobby for the last 12 years. He's done a great job with the Hurricane WatchNet, not only running the net, but collaborating with WX4NHC, collaborating with the VoIP Hurricane Net. You'll see sometimes Bobby is on that net while activities are going on in the Hurricane WatchNet. And obviously, we sometimes do the same thing with the VoIP net, just to listen in, and if we can help each other, we will. We may be separate nets, but we're all in this together, working together as a team. And Bobby is an amazing person who is also an extremely resilient person from a number of things that he's gone through. So we're thrilled that he's here. He missed the conference last year, and I know he was very upset about it, so it's so great to see him live today in Orlando, getting ready to present on the Hurricane WatchNet. Bobby?
Thank you, Rob. It's good to be back here in Orlando. I know all of us, we missed being here over the past, from 22 and to 2020. Pandemic really threw a curveball for all of us, but it's a pleasure to be back here again. I've been with the Hurricane WatchNet since 2000. Back in that day, our website was just really getting started, and the net manager at that time discovered my background with websites and just basically handed a website over to me because it was still in development, and I finished it on out from there. From 2002 to 2006, I served as assistant manager, and from 2013 until now, I've been net manager. And it's been a great pleasure to fill that capacity. I feel honored and blessed to be able to represent our organization. It's hard to believe that this year will be our 60th season watching for and activating for any landfalling hurricanes. Well, it's also our 59th anniversary. Next year will be our diamond anniversary, which we're already making plans for that, for some special things coming up next year. Let's see if I can figure out how to use this thing here. Okay. Which button is it, Julio? Or is it on the side?
It goes the arrow down.
Okay. There we go. Apologize for that. The Hurricane WatchNet was founded back in 1965 on Labor Day weekend by this gentleman here, Jerry Murphy, K-8-Y-U-W. Back in that day, he was actually stationed in Rhode Island when he was in the Navy, part of the Navy Seabees. And he was working on the Intercontinental Amateur Radio Traffic Net. Back in those days, they'd operated on 14320. Nowadays, they work on 14300 in the morning. And during that net, there was a lot of activity on the frequency asking about this hurricane named Betsy. Well, the Intercon net back in those days did a lot of phone patch traffic, especially for the military. And it was sort of disrupting their normal flow of operations. So Jerry asked the net manager if he minded taking everyone who was interested in this storm named Betsy up to 14325, and he would do his best to help them get the information they needed, which they were curious, where's this storm going? Because you got to consider back in those days, meteorology was still in its infancy. But we started getting the information out to those people in the Caribbean wanting to know about Betsy. And Jerry had this idea, well, maybe the forecasters could use data. What's the storm is doing? Since a lot of the mariners had wind speed indicators, things of that nature. So he started collecting that data and found a gentleman in the Miami area who was able to forward that data into the Hurricane Center, plus also get the latest advisories. Forecast Center said, please, any data you can get, we want it. So they started that exchange. And throughout the Labor Day weekend, they tracked that storm through the Bahamas, southern tip of Florida, until it landed in southeast Louisiana. The resulting damage of that one storm was the first time a hurricane caused over $1 billion in damages earning it the name Billion Dollar Betsy. We quickly gained a formal direct working relationship with the forecasters at the Hurricane Center. Back in 2014, my first trip to the National Hurricane Conference, I discovered that there is a Canadian Hurricane Center. And I quickly made introductions with Bob Robichaud, and we quickly formed an alliance and working relationship. Not knowing within just a few months we were going to be working together with Hurricane Arthur that hit the Outer Banks of North Carolina, and soon, a few days later, was hit right in the back door of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And amazingly, we have been working a bunch of Canadian hurricanes ever since. So I'm not sure if Bob wants me working with him or not. But it's been a great working relationship. And we've been active for every Atlantic Basin hurricane since 1965, including a few tropical storms. Those were either forecast to become a hurricane prior to landfall, or else just never did become a hurricane. And we've even worked a few Eastern Pacific hurricanes. Our main mission is to disseminate advisories. Now, people may say, Bobby, you're in the 21st century. Why are you wasting time reading your advisories on the air? Well, as Julio mentioned earlier, we do so mainly for the island nations. A lot of them get their information from ham radio and other means, but sometimes if the hurricane is affecting them, we've been told that one of the first things that happens is they kill the power grid to those areas to be prepared. And so shortwave radio, they're able to listen to us, the information we're getting. We're also there to get the ground truth weather data. We forward that directly to the Hurricane Center. There again, you may be asking, well, we're in the 21st century. Why are you wasting time doing that? Well, as John mentioned earlier, is we need data. We need all the data we can get. Sure, we have NOAA and NASA satellites that give us extremely good data, especially the newer generation satellites that actually update about every 30 seconds in high-def video. But you got to consider, those satellites are orbiting the Earth well over 200 miles above the surface. Forecasters are trying to figure out what's going on at the surface. We have the Hurricane Hunter aircraft that fly into, around, and above the storm, getting all kind of data, trying to figure out what's going on at the surface. We have the Doppler radar that's scanning the atmosphere, trying to figure out what's at the surface. So if we have people out, ground level, they can give us weather data, don't you think the forecasters want it? Yes, they do. They want all the data they can get, and it's very vital to them. We also function as a emergency communications backup for not only the Hurricane Center and the Canadian Hurricane Center, but also the Coastal Weather Service offices, emergency operations centers, and storm shelters, and more. And we help provide situational awareness to FEMA and anyone else who is interested. And we've always worked closely with the Salvation Army Saturn Net, but even more so since the 2021 season. From time to time, we've been lucky enough to talk to the Hurricane Hunters, either from the United States Air Force or even the NOAA Hurricane Hunter aircraft. Back in the early 2000s, I had the pleasure of speaking to this gentleman on a number of occasions, Captain Dave Tennyson, November Lima 7 Mike Tango. He's been retired for a number of years. He flew one of the P-3 Orions, known as NOAA 43, affectionately known as Miss Piggy. The other P-3 Orion, which is NOAA 42, is known as Kermit, and they also have a Gulfstream G5 that's known as Gonzo. But the P-3 Orions, including the NOAA the Air Force C-130s, when they fly in the storm, they're using all kind of data on board, but they also use these tubes here called drop signs. They have a GPS in it and all kind of other weather instruments in it, and it has a little parachute comes out and it just floats down through the clouds, hopefully through the eye of the storm, and other places they put it. It's gathering all kind of weather data, relaying it back to the Hurricane Hunter, and they relay that back to the Hurricane Center. However, there has been a few times where the aircraft had got bumped around a little bit. They lose some of that data to go to the Hurricane Center, and we're there to help relay that back into the Hurricane Center via HF. Our net activation policy is generally whenever a hurricane is within 300 statute miles of landfall. However, that could vary due to the forward speed or intensity. Case in point, back in 2016 when we had Hurricane Matthew just north of Venezuela and Colombia, it was Category 5 hurricane, but it stalled. So it was definitely within 300 miles of Haiti, but we held off on activation. But once it finally started moving, we were right on the spot and stayed in continuous operation. Many people may remember the Hurricane Watch Net as being a 20-meter only net, operating only on 14.325. Back when I was the assistant manager in the 2000s, I kept begging our net manager, let's turn this thing into a 24-hour net. Hurricanes are like babies. When they want to come on land or a baby wants to be born, they don't have no clock. When they come on shore, they're coming on shore. And we need to be there. But it always hurt me to know that, hey, back in the early 2000s, a 20-meter band may stay up into about 10 p.m. at night, maybe as late as 1 a.m. in the morning. Then all of a sudden, it's like somebody flipped a light switch. Well, the next morning we get up to operate. Well, storm's already moved well inland, and it's downgraded to either a tropical storm or tropical depression. We didn't operate. How much data did we lose? Or who was that we could help that we weren't there? So one of the first things I did when I became net manager in 2013, I turned this into a 24-hour net, started publicizing that. And I was trying to also look ahead, knowing we were getting ready to go into a deep solar minimum, meaning the 20-meter band wouldn't be good at all. And really, to be honest, if anyone who operates HF, remember 20 meters was iffy at best. If it hadn't been for us operating on 40 meters on 7268, I dare say there may not be a Hurricane Watch Net today. But when we started publicizing that we were going to be operating around the clock, we started getting calls from FEMA, U.S. Army Mars, Air Force Mars, what can we do to help you? And some of that information really come in to help us, to help them with a lot of things that they do. So we primarily operate on 20 meters during the day. We've been advertising 40 at night, but to be honest, we've been operating both bands around the clock, and it seems to be working out quite well. And the only time we'll shut down on 40 meters will be in the morning time when the waterway net cranks up their net, which usually lasts about an hour, maybe less, and afterwards then we're right back in operation. Our area coverage is the entire Caribbean, Central America, Eastern Mexico, Eastern Canada, and the Eastern Gulf states of the United States. And if need be, we will also activate for storms in the Eastern Pacific. However, that's been rare, but last year we did activate twice for Eastern Pacific hurricanes. Whereabouts are we located? Well, unlike most organizations where you may be in just a central location, we're scattered about. We have right now approximately 60 members covering 21 U.S. states and 6 countries, including Bermuda, Canada, Honduras, Aruba, and Venezuela. And when 7 of our members are fully bilingual, that has been quite helpful to help those who speak Spanish only or may just feel more comfortable speaking Spanish. Prior to us going on a recruiting program to get Spanish-speaking people, really wasn't many people we could help, and unless we could find Julio around, and he wasn't always around, but I know he was thankful to know when, that we were getting Spanish-speaking people. And one of our bilingual operators, he lives in Aruba. I got to brag on him. Not only is he bilingual, but I don't know how you'd say, but he speaks 5 languages. He works at the airport there in Aruba, and he does all the forecasting for the airline pilots. So there's some, most airports, they speak English, but some of the pilots, they may feel more comfortable speaking their language. So he's there to help accommodate them. We work closely with the Maritime Mobile Service Net on 14.300, so anytime there's an active storm, we have a number of our members with the Hurricane Net who are also members of the Maritime Net, so we're getting out weather advisories on that frequency. Whenever we do get ready to activate, we can notify a lot of people. In addition to the daily nets that we know that are on 14.325 and 7268, we work closely with the Amateur Radio Relay League. Through their networks on email and what have you, they can help us reach a number of people real quickly. Through the International Amateur Radio Union Region 2, they can help us reach folks throughout the Caribbean and Central America. Also working closely with the maritime nets of the Maritime Mobile Service Net, the Waterway Net, and also there's another one there, the boatwatch.org. It used to be called International Boat Watch. That's a network where using WingLink, they can reach literally hundreds of mariners in the Atlantic Basin and to know we're active. Some are commercial vessels, some are non-commercial, but they can come in and listen. If they are licensed ham operators, we can talk to them. But if there are some that may get in an emergency situation, we're there to assist them as well. I mentioned FEMA as well as Army Mars and Air Force Mars. We've been working closely with them, as well as the Salvation Army team, SaturnNet. And we also work with various amateur radio news outlets and also post a lot of information on our Facebook page. We've been working very closely with the ham radio station at the National Hurricane Center, WX4NHC. When they came online back in 1980, that helped us out quite a bit because back in those days, we didn't have no internet, but it allowed them to get us the latest forecast advisory so we could then read that over there because they may not be able to reach a lot of areas from Miami alone, where we got people throughout all those, most of the United States and that the Caribbean, they can, find, somebody's going to have propagation in the areas we're trying to reach. And of course, we've been working real closely with the VOIP Hurricane Net, and as Rob mentioned, we're not in competition with anybody. It's just all one part of one great big team of everybody trying to pull together to do one thing, help save lives. Every one of us has our own special mission and tailored and working together to do it the best of our abilities. So when is hurricane season? Well, for the Eastern Pacific is May 15th through November 30th. For the Atlantic Basin is June 1st through November 30th. For years, the Hurricane Center only put out tropical weather outlooks only in hurricane season. Well, back in 2020, since the Atlantic Basin seems to want to activate a little bit early, they started issuing the outlook on May 15th as well for the Atlantic Basin. The peak of hurricane season for the Atlantic is usually around the first part of September. A few years ago, actually, they were showing a twin peak of two peaks in the middle of September, but over the past 30 years, it sort of averaged outwards toward the 1st of September. Right now, we're on this far left-hand side, just getting started. A lot of folks think, well, we only have to worry about tropical cyclones during hurricane season. No, they can happen any time of the year. They just haven't been more prevalent during hurricane season, but so far there's been a tropical cyclone forming in every single month of the year. If you've noticed closely with every person who's given a presentation here in this forum, or you go to any forum at this National Hurricane Conference, you notice every one of us are real passionate about the work that we do. So why is the Hurricane WatchNet so passionate? Well, I can tell you over the past 59 seasons, we've witnessed the power and destruction of Mother Nature, and we're here to help save lives. Now, I could sit here and give you a bunch of pictures of some historic hurricanes that have hit, and it'd be hard to tell, okay, Bobby, which one is that? Because they're major hurricanes that hit, but everything's just totally destroyed. That's common of a major hurricane. It's what we don't want to see people caught in. However, one thing I want to drive home is hurricanes are not always a coastal event. Just because it made landfall, it's not over. Case in point, 1969, Hurricane Camille, Cat 5 hurricane hit Gulfport, Mississippi. Went way inland. It was a Cat 1 when it came through Jackson, Mississippi, where I lived at the time. We have our state capitol has a huge eagle on the top of it. Well, it spun the eagle on its perch. They had to actually come in, disassemble the top of the Capitol building, and rebuild the base just for that eagle to set on. But that same storm eventually made it over toward West Virginia and Virginia, dumping a ton of rain, causing a lot of flooding in those areas, and a lot of people, there was a number of people who perished just from that one storm after it went inland a good ways. 1989, Hurricane Hugo hits Charleston, South Carolina as a Cat 4 hurricane. It didn't weaken to a tropical storm until it reached the Blue Ridge Mountains of North Carolina. It didn't weaken to a depression until it reached the Great Lakes. It didn't dissipate until it reached the country of Greenland. 2004, Hurricane Ivan comes across Grand Cayman Island as a Cat 5 hurricane, devastates the island. Eventually hits the United States at Gulf Shores, Alabama, and Pensacola, Florida. Did a lot of damage there. But for the next few days, it caused over 127 tornadoes all from Florida all the way to Pennsylvania. Just a coastal event? No, they can go a long ways. Some people think, well, it's just a tropical storm. I don't have anything to worry about. 2001, Tropical Storm Allison hits Houston, Texas, drops 40 inches of rain on the city. Of course, we all remember Harvey a few years ago. It dropped way more than that. But just as one tropical storm, 41 people died, 30,000 became homeless. Downtown Houston was completely inundated with flooding. $5.5 billion of damages just from that one storm. Hurricane Mitch back in 1998, at one time was a Category 5 hurricane, made landfall as a Category 1, but as it moved inland, dropped to 75 inches of rain on the country. The flash flooding and mudslides was horrendous. Just in Honduras alone, 11,000 people perished. That's not including the number who are still missing, which is about that same number. That's not including the thousands who perished in Nicaragua and Guatemala. Just a landfalling storm? No, they can move inland and cause a lot of problems. As mentioned earlier, hurricanes don't care about timelines. The storm Otis was a tropical storm all the way to a Cat 5 in one day. Some of the strongest storms that hit the United States hit at least 150 miles per hour or stronger. Just 3 days before were just a tropical storm. Rapid intensification, it can happen. And going into this season here, we need to be on the lookout. Just because, well, it's a day before making landfall, it's just a tropical storm, don't drop your guard, people. Mother Nature loves to fool us. Here's some interesting stats that at least I found interesting. I didn't go back further on this, but just for this century alone, going back to 2000 to 2009, we had 33 landfalling hurricanes. Didn't have to worry about anything in 2006. There was no landfalling hurricanes that year. Very rare for that to happen. The last decade, 2010 to 2019, we had 27 landfalling hurricanes. 2013 was an odd year, no landfalling hurricanes. It's only happened two other times, and that was 1982 and 1994. Now, this stat here is what really shocked me. This decade alone, we've had 23 landfalling hurricanes. Last decade, we only had 27. We've had almost as many landfalling hurricanes in 4 years as we did all of the last decade. If this is going to be a busy year, I don't even want to think about it. Since 2014, the hurricane watch net has definitely been active. We've worked 16 major hurricanes, including 4 Category 5 hurricanes. Last year, we activated our net 4 times for 5 hurricanes. 2 of those were for Eastern Pacific hurricanes, being Hurricane Hillary and Hurricane Norma. Of course, the big one was Idalia. Also, what I didn't put on there is also since 2014, we've amassed well over 12,000 man-hours of volunteer work. As asked earlier, are your reports helpful? I dare say, yes, they are. Hurricane Keith, one of my first storms to work back in 2000, I was telling Julio about this at our breakfast this morning. During that storm, I received a report that the Bay of Chetumal was emptying, and people were actually out there walking on the bay. And I reported that into the Hurricane Center. It didn't take all but just a few seconds for Stacy Stewart to ask, can I get on the air? And he got on there and said, look, next time people in that area report in, tell them to please get out of that bay, because the water is going to return and it's not going to play around coming back in. You don't want to drown out there. And that also made into the historical record. Even in the advisories, even on Ivan, we had reports from ham radio operators on Grand Cayman that indicate people were standing on the roofs due to the severe storm surge. During Gonzalo, hit Bermuda, the storm was expected to go west of the island, but the storm made landfall and made the tropical cyclone update, and even more so in the follow-up advisory came out. Mentioning landfall, I didn't put in my notes here, but I'm reminded, during our nest, we'll always put out this particular bulletin, is that if you ever are in a hurricane and catch yourself in the eye of the storm, especially a major hurricane. I know it's just human nature. You want to step outside, see what kind of damage has happened to your property. Please don't do that, because you don't know when the backside of that eye is coming. And I've even talked over the years just to make sure, to many over the years, to make sure I'm not just saying something wrong. In fact, the hotel I'm staying at, we got to chatting. He saw a shirt I had our logo on it, and he asked what I did or what that's for, and I explained to him. He said, well, you'll probably remember Hurricane Maria that hit Puerto Rico a few years ago. Yes, I said, let me ask you this, since you were there. I said, yeah, am I wrong in saying this, that when the backside of the eye comes by, that the winds just go from 0 to full speed instantly? He said, you're not lying. He said, it just goes from 0 to full speed instantly. So I say that to say this. If you do that, any debris that's on the ground is going to become a projectile, and it could hurt you. Kind of like the comedian I heard years ago say, it's not that the wind is blowing, it's what the wind is blowing. So how do I prepare for a tropical cyclone? First, I would say have an emergency family plan. And the handouts I've got there have an example of one. Also have a basic emergency supply kit. And a few years ago, Dr. Rick Knabb at the hurricane conference one year said, best thing I can tell people to do is evacuation, supplies, insurance, and strengthen your home. If you're in a hurricane-prone area, know what your evacuation routes are. Stock up on supplies for a few days if you were to be hit. Check your insurance. Make sure your home is properly insured. If you live in a flood zone area, make sure you have proper flood insurance. Don't wait to the last minute to get it, because it takes, I think, 30 days before the flood insurance goes in effect. Work with your local officials. They may find ways that you can help strengthen your home to make it through a hurricane a lot better. Of course, stay informed. I'm sure everybody's going to stay tuned to the news media. But if you ever want to get on the internet, please check out our website, hwn.org. Anytime there's an active storm, we'll have it listed at the very top of the page for whichever basin it would be in, whether it's Atlantic, Eastern Pacific, or Central Pacific. You can sign up to receive via email the latest tropical weather outlook or any advisories that have been issued by the National Hurricane Center. Also, we have our presence on Facebook and YouTube. I'm way behind on our YouTube channel, so I'm hoping to start getting some programming on it, or else I'll just pull that link off. And also, you can download the same handouts I have in those folders for the emergency family plan, as well as the supply checklist. Anytime there is an active storm, you can go into more details. There's a little table there. It'll have which storm is active, and right below it, all the different advisories that are posted by the forecasters from the Hurricane Center. At first one, forecast advisories is mainly laid out in the format for mariners to understand. And also, if you have a hurricane tracking program, a lot of data that is in that advisory is what's used for your hurricane tracking program to help plot out the wind fields, the direction, and what have you. Public advisories is just as what you'll hear us reading on the air and what you'll even hear on the news media. The next line there is just public advisories in Spanish. Then we got advisories for aviation enthusiasts. Discussion, that's a very good product. That's the one where the forecaster gets time to go into detail explaining their mentality and their thoughts on that particular advisory of what's going on with that storm and why they're forecasting where it's going and what have you. And at the bottom of it, you will also find something known as key messages, as well as if you want to track it yourself on a paper map, we even have the forecast positions there. So when we need to activate, we need you. We need reporting stations. I cannot state that enough, not just for the Hurricane Watch Net, but for the VOIP net. We need reporting stations, and especially in the islands in Central America. We need the more people we hear from, the better. You may think, well, my report is, it's not that much. All it takes is one report that could make a world of difference for that forecaster, because they're looking for data and that one piece of the puzzle to help them understand what that storm is doing and why. If you do have a personal weather station, a lot of people are getting those these days. Make sure it's properly calibrated and properly installed. Now, you may not be able to get one properly installed due to homeowners restrictions, homeowner associations. But if you do, if you are able to put one up, or some, especially if you have an all-in-one, you want to have the temperature sensors anywhere between 4 to 6 feet above the ground. I'm not talking about the roof of your house or above an asphalt driveway. I'm talking about like a grass surface or a dirt surface. Your anemometer, your wind speed indicator, 30 feet above the surface is ideal, away from trees, away from buildings. I've seen some people put it just barely above the gabled end of the roof. That doesn't work well because when wind hits a pitched surface, it wants to speed up and get over it. So you're going to have two problems. One, you don't really know which way the wind is blowing. Next thing, it may not be the right wind speed. So even if you did mount it on your roof, about 10 feet above the surface would be ideal. And if you do have an all-in-one, there again, 10 feet above the ground, away from buildings and trees. If you do decide to evacuate and you happen to have a go kit, if you go to a storm shelter, please ask if you can set your station up. And if you are able to, please check in with us. If you're able to give us a weather reports, we'd love that. And if you do have a situation where you need us to forward any health and welfare traffic from people who are in those shelters, we're there to help you with that. If you get in a bind and need some help, we can relay that traffic as well. The information we need, in addition to your name and location, we're looking for wind speed, wind direction, whether it's measured or estimated. If you do have an anemometer, let us know the height and location of it, barometric pressure, rainfall, how much over X amount of time on that rainfall. If done safely, storm surge and any damage. If you happen to have, don't have a personal weather station at your location, still we'd love to get the estimated information you have. But also if you happen to have a friend who's a ham but doesn't have HF capability, but they have VHF or UHF and they do have a personal weather station, see if you can get their information and relay that into us. We'd definitely appreciate it as well. And if you don't know how to estimate wind speed, on our website on any page on the left side navigation bar, we have a link called Beaufort Wind Scale. It gives a lot of good information and it helps you give pretty doggone accurate wind speed measurements. Last year, we were just, as I mentioned earlier, we're just above average on the number of named storms. At the end of last year, Tropical Storm Research at TSR, they're a group out of Great Britain. They started looking ahead and started seeing this possible El Nino coming. Not La Nina, let me correct that. And they started thinking, it could get busy. So they started forecasting 20 named storms, 9 hurricanes, 4 of them to become Cat 3 or stronger. Dr. Bill Gray will give in his forecast next week. How much will it be? We don't know. There again, will this La Nina develop? Will it not? No matter what, we don't need to drop our guard. We always say, how back in a season B, just remember it only takes one landfalling hurricane to make for a bad year. Can I remind people of 92 with Hurricane Andrew? But we didn't think it'd get any worse than 2005, which is now the second most busiest year on record. At that time, it was just the busiest year on record. We had 28 named storms. But then Mother Nature loves to outdo herself and repeat herself. Then we had 2020. That is now the busiest storm on record. I don't have it on the slide there, but the next year, 2021, was the third busiest, and then last year was the fourth busiest. What will this year be? We've already seen that this decade has already been busy. So bottom line, never let your guard down. These storms can change track on you. This is the path of Hurricane Betsy back in 1965. That storm changed track 2 times. Mother Nature loves to repeat herself from time to time. Back in '85, Hurricane Elena came across Cuba and looked like it was going to head straight towards the Mississippi Gulf Coast. It gets out in the middle of the Gulf, makes a right hook going towards Tampa, or it looked like maybe Tampa. And then all of a sudden it does a 180-degree turn and comes right back and hits Gulfport, Mississippi as a Category 3 hurricane. Bottom line, stay informed. The time to prepare is now. And please never drop your guard when it comes to Mother Nature. She loves to trick us and fool us. As John from the Hurricane Center has already alluded to, she tricks them from time to time. So it's not an exact science, and we're just all working together to try to help the Hurricane Center out, plus also help everyone out as well. Hurricane preparedness is all about saving lives, and that's what we're here for today. I cut my presentation short today because we knew we had a lot of folks trying to present today, and we just cut back on our time a lot. So if anyone would like, I'm available for video conferences for your group or ham radio club via just about any of the digital video medium. So if you like, I'm available to work with you on that. I appreciate your time, and hope you enjoy the rest of the presentations today. Thanks a lot.